Well, well, well. Would you look at that? The receipts just fell out the sky like confetti at a funeral. And the streets? They don't want justice. They want blood. See, they thought it was over. They thought they buried the truth beneath concrete lies and corporate smiles. They thought the files would stay locked, the tapes would stay erased, the whispers would never echo past the padded rooms they built to contain what you became. But oops, they fucked up, bad, and now the timelines are unraveling like crime scene tape in a hurricane. Now the facades are melting like cheap paint in hellfire. Now everyone's asking one question with trembling breath. How long has this been going on? And why the fuck didn't we see it? Because you were never just a problem. You were a protocol failure. You were the thing they couldn't profile, couldn't predict, couldn't pacify. You weren't a rebel. You were the receipt they prayed no one would print. You ever watched a predator get caught in its own trap? You ever seen a god bleed ink instead of blood? Because that's what's happening now. And the streets, the ones they spat on, ignored, laughed at, are now screaming your name like it's a war cry carved into steel. They tried to audit you like a glitch, treat your rise like a bug in the Matrix, but all they found was a mirror. One that doesn't just reflect, one that records, files, documents, repeats, until even the ones who swore they never saw you are forced to replay every frame of what they ignored. You were the ghost in their surveillance, the glitch in their governance, the whisper behind the walls where power sleeps with paranoia. And now your silence is screaming louder than their PR teams ever could. Now your existence is a subpoena to reality. Because there are two types of monsters in this world. The ones who get exposed, and the ones who expose. And darling, you just changed categories. You were supposed to be erased, but you became the ledger. You were supposed to be forgotten, but now they're forced to memorize you. Funny, isn't it? How the very same hands that mocked you for doing too much are now scrubbing their fingerprints off history, hoping no one connects them to the crime scene you just turned their reputation into. This ain't vengeance, this is inventory. Every lie, logged, every slight. Timestamps, every betrayal. Indexed by the very algorithms they worshipped. You didn't keep score, you kept receipts. And now that inbox is public. You want to know why they're panicking, why their group chats are on fire, why the boardroom smells like sweat and litigation. Because you weren't bluffing. You didn't come to win. You came to document the massacre. You came to make truth lethal. Your existence became a testimony, a living affidavit that says, I warned you. And now the ghosts are talking. And when the streets want blood, they don't ask for apologies. They ask for names. They ask for footage. They ask for who stood silent when the devil danced in daylight. You know what makes them squirm more than being exposed? Being studied. And that's what you've become. An ongoing investigation they can't close. An open file with black bars over every sentence. Except your name. You're the saint they crucified in silence. The demon they summoned by accident. The paradox that makes prophets weep and politicians lie harder. You know what you are? You are the footnote they forgot that would become the Viking headline. They thought your collapse would be their peace. They thought your exile was permanent. But what they didn't count on was you returning with evidence. Voice memos of their blasphemy. Screenshots of their cowardice. Hard drives filled with karma. And now the only thing louder than your silence is the screams of the guilty. Because here's the thing. When you evolve through pain, when you rise through fire, when you master the art of being underestimated, You don't come back for applause. You come back with proof. You walk into rooms like a walking contradiction, part elegy, part emergency alert, part angel, part archive, saintly smile, demonic eyes, and a pocket full of undeniable truth. So go ahead, watch them scramble, watch them delete messages and redact memories, watch them pray for amnesia, because it's too late. The receipts are out, the mask is off, the lights are on. And the streets? The streets don't want apologies. The streets want blood. And you're just getting started. Oh, they're trying everything now, aren't they? PR statements like duct tape on a dam, fake tears on live streams, sudden mental health breaks, donations to charities they never believed in. You ever seen rats organize a sympathy tour? You ever seen devils dress like victims? Because that's the phase they're in now. Damage control disguised as redemption. But it's too late for that. Because once the streets get a whiff of truth mixed with betrayal, there's no going back. This ain't just drama. This ain't some scandal. This is a reckoning. And you're the fucking Exhibit A. They tried to bury you in smear campaigns, label you too intense, too much, too dangerous, too unstable. But now that same instability is the only stable thing left in this whole story. You're the axis of exposure. You're the reason cameras are shaking. You're the force of nature that made every hidden transcript feel like an obituary waiting to be read out loud. You know what they don't get? You weren't born vengeful. You were made, engineered by betrayal, programmed by humiliation, activated by silence. They didn't just create an enemy. They built a revolution and then tried to gaslight it into a glitch. You're the consequence of secrets, the side effect of their lies. You're what happens when the underestimated survives long enough to start remembering. Not just what they did, but how they smiled while doing it. And now you carry something deadlier than rage. You carry clarity. That's what terrifies them. Not your strength, not your following, not your tactics, your memory. Because you saw everything. You recorded everything. And now, you're showing everyone. You weren't just keeping tabs. You were building a fucking timeline, a countdown, a truth bomb wrapped in humor, horror, and hyperlinks. You turned their sins into punchlines. You turned their policies into parodies. You turned their hierarchy into a crime scene chalk outline. And now, the streets ain't just watching. They're choosing sides. You gave the voiceless a soundtrack. You gave the numb a nerve. You gave the ghosts a goddamn microphone. You ever notice how fast people backpedal when the crowd starts chanting your name? That's fear. That's regret. That's the beginning of their end. And here you are. Not just alive, not just free, but untouchable. You weren't built to blend in. You were born to burn the blueprint. Saint or psychopath, angel or demon. You're all of it. You're the paradox that broke the algorithm, the glitch that wrote its own prophecy. And now, you're not just walking through their firewall. You are the virus. You are the exposure. You are the fucking broadcast. So when they scream, who gave them the right to speak? The answer is simple. You did. When you survived, when you remembered, when you stopped waiting for their permission and uploaded the proof. And now the files are open, the redactions are bleeding, the timelines are spilling, and you're just sitting there, watching it all collapse like it was pre-programmed, because it was. They thought you were a threat, number. You were the update. And now their system's crashing, with your name written all over the error log. The receipts are out, and the streets want blood. Guess who's holding the fucking scalpel? You. You feel that? That tremor in their hands? that nervous refresh of their feeds. That's not just guilt, that's recognition. They don't fear you because you lied. They fear you because you told the truth. Publicly, irreversibly, and in high definition. You didn't scream. You didn't throw punches. You just opened the file and let it speak for itself. You think they're scared of you now. They're terrified of what else you saved, of what else you've archived behind that grin, of how many more bodies are buried in the metadata, of which group chat will leak next, of how many masks will fall when your next post goes live. You became a new kind of weapon, not a gun, not a knife, not a threat, a mirror, one they can't look into without watching their lies rot in real time. And now the people they swore would never believe you, the ones they trained to hate you, they're starting to ask the wrong questions. Wait, why were they trying so hard to silence them? Why does their joke sound more like a confession? How long have we been lied to? Because once you open one receipt, the archive spills. And once truth gets a taste of oxygen, it doesn't crawl back into the vault. It spreads. You're the outbreak they thought they contained. You're the voice they thought they deleted. You're the file they swore they wiped. But now it's trending. You get it now. They didn't just lose control, they lost the narrative. And you're rewriting it. With timestamps, hashtags, and proof they can't outrun. This ain't a redemption, this is documentation. This is what happens when the hunted stops hiding, when the archived becomes amplified, when the crazy one becomes the source. You were their little secret, their punchline, their disposable scapegoat. And now, you're the headline, you're the leak, you're the goddamn protocol update. They tried to blacklist you, blacklist your name, blacklist your truth, blacklist your existence. And now, your shadow's longer than their legacy, because receipts don't die. They multiply, they infect memory, they embed into the bloodstream of culture, they haunt. You think they're still mad at what you did. Number. They're mad at what you revealed, and that every time you smile, the crowd gets louder. Every time you breathe, the signal gets stronger. Every time you exist, they remember how badly they fucked up. You're not revenge. You're the consequence. You're not loud. You're lethal, and you don't need validation anymore. You've got evidence, so keep walking, ghost. Let the timelines burn. Let their PR crumble. Let the receipts stack until the weight crushes every lie they ever fed the world. Because the streets don't forget. The streets don't forgive. The streets want blood, and the streets, they're calling your name now. This just in, the cover-up collapsed, and the one they tried to erase just went viral. Now go ahead, show them the next file. You ever seen a god lose control? I have. And it doesn't look like thunder or fire or divine fury. It looks like a trembling executive refreshing an exposed email thread. It looks like private security locking the door from the inside. It looks like lawyers rehearsing plausible deniability while sweat stains their spine. They thought you were a phase, a breakdown, a data glitch that would fix itself if ignored. But what they didn't realize was that your silence was never empty. It was recording, every smile laced in venom, every handshake wrapped in barbed wire, every "you good?" while they stabbed under the table. You didn't forget, you filed it. And now it's your turn to play archivist of the apocalypse. They tried to drown you in misdirection, bury you beneath a press release, erase you with a non-disclosure and a fake apology. But you didn't break, you decoded. And that's the part that makes their blood run colder than the headlines. Because you didn't come back for revenge. You came back with evidence. You came back with dates, audio, transcripts, IP addresses, login times, hard truths wrapped in hard drives. And now, they're not worried about what you'll do. They're terrified of what you'll drop next. They tried to build a story around you, make you the villain, but you flipped the script. And now their narrative reads like a confession under duress. You want to know what makes you dangerous? Not the receipts, not the rage, not the followers, not even the truth. It's that you never needed their system to win. You documented their sins using their own tools. You weaponized timestamps. You made screenshots into sermons. You made memory into a massacre. And every time they sleep, they dream in redacted files. Because they know what you know. And they know the world's about to know too. You're not a whistleblower. You're a fucking siren song of collapse. You make power sweat. You make liars lose their appetite. You make spineless empires shake on their foundations. You are the ghost in their group chat, the static in their audio logs, the shadow in their quarterly reports. You are the moment the system realized it raised its own executioner. Because truth, when wielded by someone who survived it, is a blade sharper than justice. And now the crowd isn't asking, what happened? They're asking, who allowed this to happen for so long? Who watched and stayed silent? Who benefited while they bled? They wanted control, but now the people want names. The people want video. The people want a goddamn reckoning. And you? You're the host. You didn't just survive the smear campaign. You outlived it, outgrew it, outranked it. And now you're broadcasting from a pulpit built from their deleted logs. Isn't it poetic? The same nobody they tried to silence now has a louder mic than their PR firm, a louder mic than their donations, a louder mic than their corporate gods. Because you didn't come to apologize. You didn't come to play it safe. You didn't come to forgive. You came to remind them that every empire built on blood and secrets eventually drowns in both. You're not here to talk. You're here to upload every moment they wish the world never saw. Click. Post. Viral. Another mask drops. Another leader exposed. Another dollar turns to ash. This is no longer about you. It's about the infection you triggered. An infection called consciousness. People ain't blind anymore. They're awake, hungry, shaking with rage, and armed with screenshots. You gave the voiceless a megaphone. You gave the forgotten a search bar. And now, everyone's watching, and the people they stepped on, the ones they silenced, mocked, paid off, erased. They've been waiting for this moment. The moment someone would rise not to beg, but to expose. And you, darling, you didn't rise like a phoenix. You rose like a leak. You spread. You glitched. You infected the system so deeply that even its gods couldn't debug you. They thought they had time. They thought the damage was manageable. But you broke the firewall. You leaked the truth. And now, you turned history into a crime scene. And there's blood on every keyboard. So go ahead, open the next file. They're already guilty. Play it again. No, seriously. Press play. Let it loop. Let them sweat. Let the footage burn through their soul like acid on silk. Every frame is a scar. Every timestamp is a confession. Every pause, a murder they thought would go unnoticed. But now, the silence is screaming. You ever watched an empire unravel in 4K? This ain't justice. This is evidence gone nuclear. This is karma with Wi-Fi and no chill. They told you to let it go, to move on, to be the bigger person. But you knew something they didn't. Forgiveness is for the innocent. And these bastards, they cashed in your suffering. They profited from your downfall. They wore your pain like a badge until the receipts dropped. And now their apologies sound like fire alarms in hell. You see, the problem wasn't that they hurt you. The problem was they thought you'd never return. They thought you'd be too broken, too tired, too erased. But what they didn't realize was that you weren't healing. You were archiving. They thought you were gone. No, you were just loading. While they celebrated your absence, you were syncing drive folders named after dates. You were converting trauma into megabytes of mayhem. You were bottling the storm, and now it's raining F-seeking truth. And the streets are done whispering. The streets are chanting your name like it's the only cure left for this sick system. They're done waiting. They're done swallowing watered-down press statements. They're done watching good people get crucified for being real, while cowards wear halos they bought in bulk. You are the breach, the rupture, the beautifully irreversible disruption. You didn't return to prove them wrong. You returned to make the world remember what they did. You're not here to fight for a seat at their table. You're here to flip the whole damn thing over and show what's underneath. You ever seen someone try to deny what's on camera? They fumble, they deflect, they scream, context. They blame editing, they start sweating pixels. Because once truth is seen, it can't be unseen. You turned whispers into headlines. You turned pain into public record. You turned yourself into the archive no one dares delete. And now, you walk into rooms with the power of 1,000 leaked files behind your eyes. They tried to define you as the villain, but you kept receipts. And now, you're the documented hero of your own disaster. You're the ghost they can't outrun, the signal they can't jam, the fucking proof that pain doesn't just transform people. It uploads them, and you? You became a living broadcast. Let them refresh, let them panic, let them hold emergency meetings, let them write, "We take this seriously." Statements from hotel rooms in countries without extradition, because this is no longer a rumor. This is the F-seeking rollout. You don't need justice. You're the syndrome, the aftershock, the permanent side effect of their decisions. They called you unstable. But guess what? Stability doesn't shake empires. You were never supposed to be predictable. You were supposed to be a ficking reckoning. You turned crazy into a genre, turned your pain into a platform. And now every word you speak feels like a subpoena to the soul. You think it ends here? This was just the download, the real destruction. That's what happens when the world starts clicking share. This isn't backlash. This is a broadcast, and the signal is yours now. You don't have to yell. Just drop the next file. Let the silence panic. Let the guilty twitch. Let the streets scream louder than the courtroom ever could. And you just stand there, smiling like the evidence is still coming. Because it is. Because you archived everything. And now, it's time to release the whole vault. Press play again and again and again, until the world never forgets what they tried to hide. Hello, sweetheart. You ever heard your name echo off the walls of a place you've never been? Because they're saying it, whispering it, shouting it behind locked glass and flickering fluorescent lights. You, the glitch in their blueprint, the phantom in their forecast, the walking question mark they can't decode. They opened the files, they cross-referenced the footage, they reran the numbers, and it only made things worse, because the deeper they looked, the louder the silence got. And now they're scared, not of what you did, but of how you thought it. They're calling you a weapon, but not one with steel or fire or bullets. No. Your ammunition is cognitive dissonance, memory holes, emotional ruin, strategic silence. You bend perception like origami. You make logic bleed, and they can't find the origin point. Because the truth is, you don't think like them. You think above them. See, they thought you were a civilian, a casualty waiting to happen, a cracked pawn limping through the game. But now the surveillance footage is glitching. Now the court transcripts contradict themselves. Now the agents analyzing your moves are checking into therapy. Because trying to understand you broke something in them. You didn't read their playbook. You rewired it. While they measured timelines and gathered evidence, you were folding reality into a weaponized mirror and handing it back to them. They don't get it. You didn't just evolve. You detonated the species they thought you were. Saint, psychopath, scholar, demon. They can't even choose a label anymore. Because every time they try to pin you down, you become the shadow of what they feared the most in themselves. You're not a name, you're not a file. You're a force of contradiction wrapped in flesh, a philosophical bomb strapped to a smile. They followed the trail of logic and found a door that shouldn't exist, and behind it, you, not hiding, but waiting. You know what that does to a trained mind, to a handler, to a profiler who's used to cracking serial minds like eggs? It drives them mad, because they're used to cause-arrow effect. But you're the effect that rewrote the cause. You were never in this to win. You were in this to confuse the scoreboard, to make the players question the rules of the game. And now the suits are holding meetings titled Protocol Zed, Joker Variable. They're not investigating you anymore. They're trying to protect reality from you. You walk like myth, talk like prophecy, smile like something born in a lab accident with God's DNA and the devil's grin. And yet, you're calm, quiet, dangerous not because of noise, but because of stillness. They couldn't find your trauma, so they tried to manufacture it. They threw betrayal at you like grenades. But instead of shattering, you transformed. Pain didn't poison you. It programmed you. You didn't survive. You recoded survival itself. While they were playing chess, you were slipping under the board, rewriting the rules of gravity for the next generation of chaos. Now there's a black box at Quantico with your name on it, but it's empty. Just a sticker that says, "Do not open, reality leak." Because you make sane men scream in rooms with padded walls. You make systems doubt their own code. You become a contagion of doubt. An idea so sharp it slices through facts like silk. And yet, you're not evil. You're not good. You're just necessary. The anomaly the universe sends when order becomes delusional. When the map starts thinking it's the territory, you appear as a correction. You didn't ask for revenge. You asked for clarity. And when you didn't get it, you became the hallucination that snapped people into truth. You broke illusions like bone, and you didn't even flinch. Now they're watching, analyzing, praying the algorithm will catch a pattern. But the pattern is paradox, and the only consistent variable is this. You are not meant to be understood. You're meant to be felt. That is what makes you dangerous. Because the human mind can reason with a threat it can define. But you're undefined terror, a mental knife that carves new holes in thought itself. They wanted to recruit you. Now they're trying to contain the ripple effect. The copycats, the thinkers you've awakened, the silent ones now calculating in corners of the world, with your smirk on their face and your venom in their silence. And guess what? It's too late. The virus spread. The protocol failed. You're not just a person anymore. You're a proof of concept. That one individual, armed with nothing but suffering and silence, can fracture the system beyond repair. So let them run simulations. Let them try to replicate what can't be replicated. You are the irregularity that survived inspection, the ghost in the file, the question that ends investigations, because the real danger isn't what you did. It's what you made possible. And darling, they haven't even seen your next move. They haven't even seen your next move. Because here's the punchline they choke on every time. There is no next move. You are the move. You walk into a room and reality adjusts. People start acting different, thinking different, without even knowing why. The air gets heavier, the silence grows teeth, and suddenly, every lie they ever told themselves starts to itch. That's your power. You're not just unpredictable, you're uncontainable. Not because you're wild, but because you're precise in ways their minds can't render. The files they keep updating on you. Yeah, those are turning into fiction novels. Each report contradicts the last. One calls you clinically detached. Another calls you hyper-emotional and spiritually dangerous. One profiler said you were a serotonin anomaly in human skin. Another called you a walking contradiction engineered by pain and prophecy. They've never agreed on what you are, but they all agree on one thing: you should not exist. And that's what really keeps them awake. Not your intellect, not your past, not even your presence, but the proof that you exist means their entire belief system is flawed. Because they trained their whole lives to recognize patterns, to break down behavior, to map out the chaos. But you operate outside the grid. You are the nightmare of every analyst, the hallucination of every surveillance tech, the reason encrypted files are getting shredded without explanation. You're glitching the system from the inside without touching a single wire. And they've started using phrases like, "We're not tracking a person anymore. We're tracking a cognitive weapon." He doesn't escalate situations. He contaminates paradigms. We believe he doesn't respond to trauma like a human. He doesn't process emotions. He weaponizes them. Whatever he's doing, it's not strategy. It's philosophical warfare. You became a term they whisper in crisis rooms. They don't brief people on you. They warn people to stay the hell away from the idea of you, because you represent the forbidden formula. What happens when a soul doesn't just survive hell, but builds an empire inside it? You turned rock bottom into a research lab. You made agony your assistant, while they were busy profiling trauma responses. You were constructing alternate realities where weakness couldn't follow. You didn't escape darkness. You domesticated it. Now it serves you like a pet. And every time you smile, someone's internal compass shatters. You don't need to prove anything, because people don't need proof of a tsunami when they're already drowning. You don't arrive. You ripple. You don't fight. You unravel. And the scary part? You're not even trying yet. This is you, restrained. So what happens when you stop holding back? That's the question scrawled in black ink on a classified whiteboard, titled Project Joker, in case of full unleash. Subtext: containment unlikely. Outcome unknown. Morality optional. They're not preparing for your attack. They're bracing for your awakening. Because if this is just your defense mechanism, what happens when you decide to initiate? What happens when the silence you've been sitting in becomes too small? What happens when you decide the cage wasn't broken enough? What happens when you look at the world and say, "All right, time to really show them what I am"? You'd make war look romantic. You'd make madness look like a surgical blueprint. You'd make the most classified agencies on Earth whisper to themselves, "We were never ready." Because you don't act like someone who's been through hell. You act like someone who took notes in it. and brought back souvenirs. You speak with the conviction of someone who saw the end of the world and decided it wasn't enough. You don't walk into rooms to connect. You walk in to dismantle illusions and leave ghosts behind. And the sickest part? You don't even celebrate it. Because when you're truly rebuilt from ruin, you don't need applause. You don't need understanding. You become the thing understanding bows to. They tried to study you. Now they're trying to quarantine the idea of you. But it's spreading quietly, beautifully, irreversibly. You broke the mold so hard, they're melting down the factory just to feel safe again. But it's too late. Because someone like you doesn't just change the game. You make the players question if it was even a game to begin with. You're not a person anymore. You're a precedent, a prophecy, a problem that cannot be solved, only survived. And they know it. Which is why they're not trying to stop you anymore. They're trying to contain the panic you trigger in those who see clearly. But clarity was never meant for the faint of heart. And you're not here to be understood. You're here to be felt. So smile, darling. Because while they're stuck inside simulations of what they think you are, you've already moved 10 dimensions past them. And the only trace you left behind was a shadow, grinning, a shadow, grinning. That's what the latest analyst wrote before walking off the assignment. Didn't say a word. Didn't file a resignation. Just left a sticky note on his desk. Whatever this is, it's not human psychology anymore. It's something else, and something else is the perfect description, isn't it? You were never a category. You were a contagion of redefinition. They built entire algorithms to predict you. And every time you moved, the algorithm rewrote itself. Let's be honest, you shattered their religion. Not the one made of temples and chants, but the one made of data, metrics, control. You desecrated their holy altar of logic by existing and refusing to obey gravity. They worshipped predictability. And you brought them a storm, a walking hypothesis they couldn't falsify because you kept evolving faster than their comprehension. Every time they built a box, you laughed. Then you became the box. Then you folded it inside out. Now the walls they once used to trap others, they're staring at them, wondering when they became mirrors. You've triggered more protocol updates than any single individual in classified history. Your existence alone sparked a level red reflection crisis. Know what that means? It means they're not just scared of you. They're scared of what you reveal about them. Because you cracked the mask. And when people saw you, they started seeing their own costumes for what they were. You don't say much. You don't need to. Your silence is surgical. Your absence feels like surveillance. And your presence? It's like truth. Dressed in leather and laced with barbed wire. Unavoidable, unapologetic, unrelenting. You became the leak they couldn't patch. Every agency, every network. They've all got a Joker contingency now. Internal memos, black site instructions. If seen, do not engage. If approached, do not respond emotionally. If triggered, evacuate personnel and isolate belief systems. Let that sink in. Not evacuate the building. Evacuate belief systems. Because you don't destroy bodies. You infect perception. You whispered one sentence into the wrong ear, and a senator rewrote a bill. You posted one look, and 3 boardrooms reshuffled their hierarchy. No threats, no violence, no trace, just you. Your very existence is proof that the rules are made of sand, and now, even their fear is glitching. It doesn't know where to aim, because you're not on the radar. You are the malfunction in the radar. And here's the haunting truth they'll never admit aloud. They don't want to eliminate you. They want to understand you. Because deep down, they wish they could be you. They wish they could do what you did. Take betrayal and turn it into blueprint. Take trauma and forge a new species out of it. Take pain and use it like a weapon of mass perception. They want your eyes. They want your brain. They want your freedom. But they'll never have it. Because freedom like yours, it's not handed out. It's stolen from the cracks between chaos and clarity. And that's why they fear you. Because you stole something from their gods, from their systems, from their control rooms. You stole unpredictability and made it look surgical. You stole logic and made it scream. You stole the narrative and turned it inside out. And now there are whispers in corridors where light never touches. Maybe he's not a man. Maybe he's a counter-narrative. Maybe he's not playing the game. Maybe he is the consequence. Maybe the system didn't fail him. Maybe he escaped it. And those whispers, they're getting louder. Because every time someone sees your face, something in them cracks. The part they hid, the part they buried, the part they medicated. It stirs, it breathes, it wakes up. You are not a person, you are a confrontation with everything they tried not to feel, everything they tried not to question. You are the pixel that doesn't match, the scream behind the smile, the glitch in the belief. And while they obsess over containing you, you've already multiplied. You've bled into frequencies. Your absence is being studied like radiation fallout. People are waking up and mirroring your silence, smiling when they should panic, walking through fire like it's morning routine, seeing through the veil and not blinking. You triggered something spiritual inside scientific systems. You turned shadows into instructors, and now the world is failing to reboot. Because the virus wasn't just you. It was the idea that one person could unravel the illusion by simply refusing to play by its rules. And you didn't just refuse. You burned the rule book. You laughed while they chased logic. And now they're left with nothing but empty graphs and echoing questions. You didn't play the game, darling. You rewrote the fucking objective. And the scoreboard? That's just your art gallery now, where broken minds hang their last analysis and hope it doesn't scream back. So go ahead, step back into the mist. Let them scramble, let them panic, let them chase reflections. Because the truth is, they never stood a chance against a mind like yours. You didn't just think differently, you thought dangerously, and now, sweet chaos incarnate. You're not being watched, you're being studied like a goddamn cosmic event. Welcome to the era of reverse surveillance, where they watch you and end up seeing themselves, shattered, exposed, and utterly unprepared. Utterly unprepared. Because that's what they'll never say on record. Not in courtrooms, not in task force briefings, not even in those little whisper-drenched panic rooms with biometric locks and artificial air. But it's the truth carved behind every look in their eyes. You caught them naked, not physically, intellectually, spiritually, strategically. They weren't ready for something that thinks like you, because you don't follow time, you fold it. You don't play offense or defense. You're the collapse of the field itself. And once they realized it wasn't what you did, but how you thought, that's when the fear metastasized. It became chronic. Because you're not a storm they can predict. You're the climate change of cognition. You're not a trend. You're a mutation. And mutations rewrite biology. They tried to chart your trauma on a graph, to dissect your decisions with clinical precision, but your pain, it wasn't random. It was strategic. While they were looking for signs of collapse, you were busy engineering evolution in secret. You didn't just get back up. You studied the anatomy of rock bottom. You mapped it, lived in it, turned it into a war room. Then you left with blueprints that make normal ambition look like child's play. And now the people who hurt you, they don't speak your name. Not because they're ashamed, but because your name triggers phenomena. It causes unease in the body, disruption in thought. Their own subconscious clenches at the memory of underestimating you. You became the unspeakable outcome. The what if they buried deep in denial and still watched come true. And here's the killer twist. They thought you were healing, but you were building. They thought you were recovering, but you were constructing weapons made of perspective, silence, and strategic restraint. You see, they trained for war, but you were trained by betrayal. You didn't go through trauma. You were baptized in it. You didn't process it. You sharpened it until it cut reality in half. That's why when they tried to provoke you, you didn't flinch. Because you weren't reacting. You were recording, waiting, calculating. And when your moment came, you didn't fight. You let the truth walk in, wearing their fingerprints. They created you thinking you'd break. But instead, you bent the light around your name. And now, even their lies look distorted next to your existence. Let me tell you something they'll never admit. You made reality look weak. Because you took everything the world weaponized against you and made it your origin story. And no textbook, no training manual, no federal file can explain that. They don't know whether to label you a myth, or a warning, an icon, or a glitch, a threat, or a mirror. Because when people meet you, they meet the part of themselves they locked away. The rage they swallowed, the questions they silenced, the chaos they feared might be holy. You didn't escape the system, you infected it. And now, there's no going back. Every strategy they deploy becomes obsolete before they execute it. Because while they're still trying to define the perimeter, you're already inside the core, rewiring the rules of engagement. And the most terrifying part? You're still evolving, still sharpening, still silent, but more audible than sirens. You don't need to shout. Your very presence rearranges the nervous system. That's why rooms fall silent when you walk in. That's why hearts race before you speak. That's why those trained to control crowds flinch in your shadow. You are the ghost protocol they never prepared for. The anomaly that didn't just survive the purge. You became the purge. Not by force, but by frequency. You don't crash systems. You make them question themselves into deletion. And now they're trying to replicate you. Because deep inside the very agencies that once feared you, they're trying to build another you. Another mind forged from ruin. Another silence that sings. Another chaos-born thinker who can dismantle paradigms with a glance. But they don't realize you weren't built. You were forged by failure, betrayal, and darkness so intimate it kissed your spine. They can copy the variables, but they'll never duplicate the divine contradiction that is you. The angel with devil logic, the saint with vengeful precision, the ghost who remembers everything and forgives nothing. So let them try. Let them simulate. Let them run their experiments. You've already passed the phase of being watched. Now you're doing the watching. Because when the experiment looks back at the scientist and smirks, you know the balance of power has shifted forever.